Welcome to the AI+HI Project. I'm Alex Alonso, SHRM's Chief Data and Analytics Officer. Thanks for joining us. This week, we're exploring the role of AI in helping people master critical communication skills for the workplace. Our guest this week is Alex Haitoglou, founder and CEO of Ovita, which is based in London. It's a pleasure to have you here today. I can't wait to dive in and learn more about what it is that you are doing and how you see AI changing both the nature of work, but also human intelligence as a whole. What inspired you to create Ovita to help people improve their communication? Just out of curiosity, like, I know you've told me this origin story before, but I'd love for others to hear this origin story.
Brilliant. First of all, so glad to be here and having this chat with you, Alex. It's, I think, a very, very important topic for today. And I think it's ultimately, it's about the future of work. It's about how humans work together with AI, which is already happening, is going to happen even more in the future. And I would argue it's also about what is uniquely human and will not be replaced by AI versus many, many other things that will be. So the inspiration for this, I guess, starts from my experiences working in the corporate world initially. So I worked for Procter & Gamble for many years, and it was where I started my corporate career. And I was amazed by the amount of effort the NGOs put in to help people learn leadership skills across a range of topics, including a lot of coaching and communication skills. So there were like 3, 4, 5-day courses that would be all around helping leaders understand how to get the best out of their people by communicating better, asking better questions, applying coaching skills at work. And I was so fascinated by that despite my role being business and marketing, I ended up actually running the global grow coaching program for Procter & Gamble for quite a few years. That was my night job. But by day, I was selling detergents. By night, I was very curious about how to help people improve fundamentally the way they connect with others, and especially with employees. And one thing that occurred to me during that period of time is, first of all, despite the fact that PG was very serious about devoting time and helping people, literally leave the jobs for 3, 4 days at a time and do full immersion courses on this, there was still a lot of skill and possibility being left on the table. What I mean by that is, when we do amazing trainings, people would go back to work and would not necessarily be able to apply more than a very small percentage of what we have learned, despite the fact that we spend all this effort and despite the fact that we had some amazing trainings happening and incredible trainers and amazing results. So that was one really interesting insight, which is, how do we actually take this type of training and make it applicable on the job? And how can we measure that? A second one was that during that, I actually introduced the idea of recording people while they're having discussions. And at the time, that was with a VCR, by the way. So it was not an easy process to record. And then we would sit around and watch it together with the groups as we were training. We're running multiple trainings around the world every year. And we sit around and look at this. And I was fascinated because this was a process that, almost no one wanted to do in the beginning. So people would say, what do you mean recording ourselves? So everyone was feeling a bit uncomfortable, with a range of people very uncomfortable to just a little bit. But then at the end, that was consistently the highlight on the feedback forums. And we were doing at the time, we had literally tens of trainers doing hundreds, even more than 1,000 people a year across the world at the time. So we had really a lot of data showing that, hey, this is something that people don't necessarily initially want to do. Once they do it, they go and say, oh my God, this is amazing. This is really interesting. And that was a second big inspiration for this. And I guess as I carried on with my corporate career and then also moved into startups, that question still remained with me, which is, how do you actually help truly scale up the ability to train people on behavioral skills that are not easy to just, pick up from a training and just go and apply? How do you actually measure that so that you know it's happening and you bring it to work? And also, what do we need to do to fundamentally transform what is the current approach to leadership development? And one of the things that I find fascinating with regards to leadership is that if you think about other things we teach, right? I mean, whether it's sport or whether it's, I don't know, driving a forklift, right? we never teach based on just seminars or books. This is not something we do. Like if I give you an example, like if I want to learn better how to play tennis, you're not going to send me on a 3-day seminar where I talk about tennis and expect me to become better at playing tennis. You will not just give me tennis books, right? These things can help, but fundamentally what you're going to do is you're going to get me to practice and then what? Go and play games of tennis. So one of the things that became clearer to me was that the way we approach leadership development needs to change, and we need to go back to what we know works in behavioral change. And I think this is where the world of sports is incredible, because we have now for 10, 15 years, technology working together with humans to improve actual behavior, which is what sport is, and we measure that. So I think that was the combination of the insights of, hey, how can we, A, get people to change behavior, learn how to do it, but also apply it or work and measure it? B, how do you actually help people understand through this process of recording myself and watching what I'm doing? And C, inspired by sport, how does this process of actual practice, recording, data, and analysis that is happening by AI, right? I can get insights, but then still go out and practice and apply what I'm doing at work. And that for me has been both the inspiration and the drive. I think it's a massive need out there. And I think for the first time, I would argue in human history, the AI tools that are available allow us to do this at scale, because this was something that up until literally 3, 4, 5 years ago was impossible to do.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is I think the market is agreeing with you in large part because obviously, look, you won the 2024 Better Workplaces Challenge Cup, brought to you by SHRM Labs. You won that, and congratulations on that big challenge. The other thing that you've done is you've been recognized by the International Coaches Federation, and I know you've got a huge following when it comes to leadership coaches and executive coaches as a whole. Uh, you know, one thing that struck me in what you were saying, and forgive me, I'm a data guy, right? I'm a data wonk. Uh, One thing that stands out is this is an area in leadership where, for many years, to your point, we've practiced the notion of development without the data that comes from being able to transfer the learning you've had. And what I really like about the notion of AI in general supporting this is not only that does it automate the scoring of one's actual application of their new skills, it also does provide this notion of generating more data, something that I can use to kind of continue to grow and continue to develop myself, right? In most circles, you hear about, especially in the HR world, you hear about AI from the lens of compliance and bias and things like that. This is an area where I think it's untapped and really the longer tail of what AI can bring to the table when it comes to human communication.
I love that. I just want to add something on this data and generating more data, which is really interesting. So if I was to come and tell you, and this is a question I've asked business leaders quite a few times in the business that we're working with, if I was to come and tell you, hey, I want to become an amazing world-class golf, tennis, whatever player, and I will never record any of my games or practice, we'll never get any data for that. I will just go and play. What are my chances of becoming world-class? And the answer is, from everyone, 0. We all agree, right? So then I ask, okay, all the data shows that the one-on-ones that literally the million one-on-ones that are happening every week in the US between employees and managers are probably the most important thing in building relationships between them, right?
Yeah.
People leave their manager, they don't leave the business. We know that. SHRM knows all that. We know that 84% of employees in the US say, my manager makes my job more stressful. It makes my job worse. So we know that this is happening. We know it's an issue. How many times have you ever recorded even a practice of doing a one-on-one to see how you're doing? And the answer is 0, right? So that is exactly the point. Unless we start generating some data very privately, securely, respecting the data rights for the people, these are all really important parts. But unless we start doing that, our chances of improving are always going to be down to luck. Some people improve, some not. Maybe I had an amazing inspirational boss when I started and I have a model there, but the chances are, based on the data, that I don't. So that for me is a fundamental aspect. How can we actually start bringing data, quantitative data and analysis in what's happening And also recognize that this is not going to replace, that's a fear that many people have that, oh my God, this is all about being replaced with that. I think it's extremely unlikely that we replace the fundamental leadership, connection, and inspiration, and anything like that with AI. Now, will we replace some skills of leaders? For sure, because AI can do it better. But again, going to the world of sports, I can have an app today on my phone that will give me all the data about tennis, golf, any game I want to play. Has it stopped us needing human coaches or human sports coaches or personal trainers? No, it's the opposite. We have more sports coaches and more personal trainers today than ever. It's a growing profession, by the way, despite the fact that you can get all the data analytics on your phone. Why? Because that process requires an engagement with another human. Leadership and leadership at work requires the engagement. It's part of what we do. It's part of our DNA. So this is not about fundamentally replacing that. It's about how do we use AI, like we do in sport, like we do in other things, to actually make us better on what makes us uniquely human. And that's where I think data can be transformational for our organization.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to your point, our own data here at SHRM speaks to the fact that 56% of just U.S. workers alone have left a bad boss in their career. Right? Will admit that their bad boss has left a career, it caused them to make a career change. And then beyond that, what's even more fascinating is 26% of workers say that they dread going to work because of their boss. Now, notice that word is dread, right? That's not fear. That's not no, it's dread. So there's real, I guess what I would say is emotional currency related to this. And really, when you think about it, I also think about the potential in terms of productivity, in terms of all the various outputs that we want to see when we're creating better workplaces. So let's do a deeper dive, right? Let's jump in a little bit and see what it is and I'm going to come back. I want to ask you something about leadership effectiveness in general, but we'll get to that. When you look at, the way that the workforce is changing today, right? And you look at how fast paced the digital transformation is across organizations, right? You can't be in a workplace in 2024 without hearing the word transformation. If you are, you're probably in a government setting or something like that, right? What do you think are the work critical or the most critical communication skills leaders and other growth minded kind of professionals need today as they evolve?
That's a fantastic question. And I will start with some of what I would call table stakes. There's some fundamental things that are surprisingly uncommon. I'll give you a practical example, right? One of the easiest things to measure in any one-on-one discussion is how much talking versus listening. Everyone can do it today with a simple AI. You can do that. If you get more nuanced, you can look at different types of questions. You can look at tonality, pace. You can look at how people engage with each other. But fundamentally, when we start a process with leaders, we always ask, before anyone does any recordings, how much do you think you talk versus listen? And invariably, from people working in businesses, we get answers, with my team, it's 50-50 because some balanced, it's a balanced discussion. Some people say, 2 ears, 1 mouth. I want to listen to my team because it's about them doing it. So we get really solidly very good answers. And then we get people usually to do at least 2 or 3 recordings. So we have a range of data, not just a one-off. Would you like to guess what is the average that leaders speak with their employees versus listen on pretty much what we've had so far? So they claim between 30 and 50%.
Yeah.
What do you think is the average? Average, not outliers, just average.
Ooh, I would argue maybe 8 to 10%.
So it's not too far. The average is about 70%. Right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
But people think that I'm talking 50% or 30% of the time. And in practice, it's more around 70. And we have the outlets. To have an average of 70, you have 80s and 90s.
Okay.
So even that simple thing, which is something that so far I could hands on heart say 99% of people that we've shown the data afterwards do not do this consciously. One thing that I really want to stress out here, and bosses that have pretty horrible relationship with their employees without even realizing it, they're not doing that because they're bad people. They're not doing that because, they don't want to do it better. They're doing that because they're not aware. The first process for us when we get someone with Ovita is to just make them aware of what's actually happening. And the results, when people first see their data and look at what's going on, when we have a first review and they go like, oh my God, I never realized they did that. It's like beyond their current understanding. And why is that? Because as humans, our ability to remember what happened in a 1 hour discussion that we run regular with, I don't know, I had, leadership teams of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people, right? I mean, it's memory is not anywhere near good. We remember just snippets. So I think the first fundamental communication skills are really the basics of understanding how much am I talking versus listening? What type of questions am I asking? There's a huge difference in leadership with people that use open questions at the right moments to help their employees come up with ideas, perspectives, to listen to what they actually want to say versus what we see regularly, which is people actually pretty much asking yes or no questions throughout the one-on-one. So you're going to go and speak to that person? Yes. So this project, are you going to finish it by, yes. So, and there's like series of, meetings over which, but that's the only thing that happens. Then there's other practical things like, am I interrupting or being interrupted more than the other person? Right? That's really, really interesting. Another thing which is very difficult for leaders to do is give space. So ask a question and truly wait for the other person to answer. Give them space.
Mhm.
And what we've realized is that ultimately, all of these things together go down to creating psychological safety. That is literally, if you cannot be in a place where you create psychological safety, like when you're telling me about, I don't know, almost a third of people dreading to go to work because of the boss, you can imagine how they feel about going into a one-on-one discussion, right? So, if that's, I think if you were to the other side, there's probably only 10 or 20% of employees that are genuinely looking forward to having that discussion. And that's a really interesting measure that you can break down to specific behaviors. I can guarantee you today, it doesn't mean that if you listen 30% and they speak 70, that you're amazing what you're doing. But I can guarantee you that if you do the opposite, if you're speaking 70, 80% of the time, the chance of building trust and having psychological safety is very, very little. I was speaking to a very senior leader of an organization that we're working with who told me, yeah, she said, that's what's happening when I go to a meeting with my chairman. They're amazing, inspirational, blah, blah. They talk the whole time. I'm now at the level where I'm not even preparing what I'm going to say because I don't get this anything. They just talk to me. And this is, by the way, these are smart,
Yeah.
capable, talented people. We're not talking about people that are in any way sort of, not performing everything else, but they're still getting that part wrong because they don't have the awareness. So I think for me, the fundamental communication skills are those. And then once you become more nuanced, it gets a lot more contextual, it gets a lot more cultural. I was speaking recently with an organization that's interested in innovation. Guess what? You need a certain subset of pack of questions and approach if you want your team to innovate, right? There's like, you need to create a space for that. However, I'm shocked, maybe not so shocked anymore, but I now understand that the reality is most of us, and by the way, I include myself on this, when I started recording on our platform, I was amazed with what I saw there, don't even understand those basics. I think if we improve even those basics, we're fixing 40, 50% of the issue by just the fundamentals of a good discussion, which is not just employee, by the way, manager.
Mhm.
It's also a discussion you probably want to have with your spouse or with your kids or with other personal life. And then building on top of that, it's about specific skills within the context. What type of discussion is the career discussion? You really want the person to be talking about there. Is it a feedback discussion? That's a different type of leadership discussion, right? If it's a hard feedback discussion, that's a different type of leadership discussion. So it becomes a bit more nuanced there.
So you were talking about those skills, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that you highlighted specifically was kind of where it is that leaders still need to kind of grow that human potential, grow themselves, and really think about those skills that they, no matter what they do, they haven't really fully developed in some way. You shared examples as a way of thinking about it. I guess my question is, how does the AI actually help them to do that? Where do you see AI actually helping them grow those skills? Is it a practice? Is it a learning from the data? Is it both? Share it with us.
So that's I think what is really revolutionary about having AI that understands language, and not just language, but also other things like, speed, personality, and which is we can actually start generating some objective data about what's going on. And in the simplest of forms, of course, AI is creating objective metrics. I've had a lot of leadership coaches come and tell me, you know something, giving feedback to some of the leaders that we're coaching on what they're doing in their own one-on-ones is completely different with Ovita, because we don't give them the perspective as in, hey, I think you really overtalk what to do. You really need to give more space to your people. Just say, hey, look, based on the data on your last X number of sessions, you're talking around 70% of the time. How does that work based on what you think you need to be doing? So there's something very, very powerful about starting to have some external perspectives that are not judgments. And that is something that the AI can do robustly, because it produces an outcome and then you can go and validate it and it's actually there. So that's one aspect that is really important. So on producing metrics, the second part that's really interesting is we're now in a phase which is an application we're doing with Ovita, where we can actually train specific AIs for behavioral markers for a specific organization, for what they're trying to achieve. So we're able to take a model, fine tune it, rug it, do a few things that will make it a lot more precise to the use case, and say, hey, this organization really cares about X, I don't know, innovation in this, right? Or in this context, this is a discussion that we really care about innovation. Or these are actually our leadership behaviors that we have out there. How many of those can we actually start picking up consistently across sessions? That's something that humans cannot do, because the amount of time it would take to do that, it's completely insanely expensive, right? To give you an idea, we work with quite a few universities like Columbia, New York University, London Business School. To review a session, to review 1 hour, 1 hour one-on-one from a human being and mark anything, it takes 2.5 to 3 hours from experienced people, right? It will never work in any way. So the AI now can be trained to pick up specific things based on your organization, what you're looking for, and start generating data like, okay, here's what your best performers are doing. That's interesting. What's the difference between that and the average? So we start generating this type of benchmarking that was not possible before. And then the final part, which is another interesting, is that AI can look into then, once you identify that there is something there to work on, it can look at specific content, create something for you that you can learn for you specifically, that is not like, it might be different for you and me, but it's based on the same content from the business, whatever else. And then I go and practice and I still get feedback afterwards about what I'm doing there. So it really closes the loop from identification of behaviors that I might want to change and improve to content that I can understand why I need to change it, what I can do to change it, and then going out to do what we call deliberate practice that specific skill set and say, hey, I've done it or haven't done it. And that process, it's impossible to do by humans, both from a cost perspective, but even from a consistency perspective, because how many humans do you have that are consistently able to mark something?
I mean, that's the nature of humankind, right? You're never going to be as consistent as we think we are. So I guess the question I would raise for you then is, naturally, you've done a world's worth of work on this space, right? I mean, you generate AI, you see how it is that it's changing the world of development and human growth and human communication in general. My question for you is, what are the big impact stories that you can think of? In other words, what were some of the most impactful, maybe even surprising kind of things you've seen professionals really pick up or learn based upon communicating with the use of the AI, that, any AI in general? I mean, share that.
So, are you talking about specifically what we do or in general?
In general, but I mean, honestly, if it's something that relates to what Ovita has done or
Yeah.
something like that, I can only imagine, having seen some of what Ovita has done and produces, what it's like to watch somebody actually have that epiphany of, "Oh, I didn't realize I do that in my one-on-ones," or, "I didn't realize I do that when I'm coaching." It would be fascinating to just hear about those stories.
Well, I can give you a few examples around that. An example of very, very talented chief HR officer who also is a coach, and they are leading a very big business in the UK. We did a really, really solid piece of work on recording their one-on-ones across quite a few different people, and it was interesting because that person had all the skills, being a coach and everything else, of being an incredible, powerful force, inspirational force during this process. And when we looked at their first interactions together, they were literally shocked. And it was one of those things where they went, oh my God, I'm not doing any of the things that I'm training my team to do. How is this even possible? And the reason why that for me was really interesting is because normally it takes a while for people, you learn a skill, it takes a bit to change it. This person, very smart, knew what they're doing. It was almost instant. Literally, we did a bunch of sessions and then they went down and said, okay, so I'm going to change this. And within literally a few sessions afterwards, we had clear, measurable differences to the point, and that has been a learning that we've done since then, where their team was like, what's changed? What's going on here? Which is why now we have the team involved when we're doing this as a process. We say, hey, this is a full process where the employee and the leader together discuss how this is going for them because we want to improve the relationship fundamentally. But what is fascinating for me to see is how fast someone who, in this case, had the skill set was able to change into a different behavior that made an impact straight away. And another one, which I think is really fascinating, it was with the leadership team where very, very good CEO, highly respected from their teams. That the performance was very good, and yet the feedback from the team was consistently, we don't feel connected, right? It's like fantastic person, but we just don't feel connected. And we did a lot of their effective executive one-on-ones, and then what we've noticed was that over a long range of discussions, they were not at any moment showing any signs of vulnerability.
Hmm.
They were not actually asking for help or proposing an idea and get feedback. It was like very much, by the way, very well structured meetings, good discussions. No one had massive, there was not, this is not the case of someone not performing. It was actually a good performance, but there was something missing. And that person was getting very, very upset about what is it that I'm doing. And then we just said, look, out of all of this, you literally have almost never asked for help. You never showed any sense of vulnerability. Unless you model that behavior, your team are not going to feel connected with you. It's really simple. It's a choice. And again, these are what I'm fascinated is that by having this type of insights, which we would never have if humans were doing this work, right? It's impossible to do that. How do you compare like 20 sessions? You can get a person who is open and wants to change. In my view is that most business leaders are. My view is that very optimistic, maybe, but I think that the vast majority of business leaders, when shown data in a way to do something better, they will do it. Seeing how fast you can start improving this and also how fast you can get people into what you mentioned before, which is the idea of the ongoing development. I mean, you would not start recording a few games of tennis and then stop after you learn how to serve. You would carry on for the duration of your tennis career. And I think that's where this is going. Similarly to what has happened in sales, where sales is an ongoing process now. Literally all call centers in the world are recording everything and you constantly learn and become better. I think that is what is bound to happen in leadership. And I think it's going to have profound positive impact on that 30% that are dreading go to work, or 80% that are saying my boss makes my job worse because it stresses me. And that for me is the really exciting part. And maybe taking it a bit further to not just what we're doing, but AI in general, I think we are already in a world that will going to be even more obvious over the next few years that technical skills, in most cases, will be less valued because AI will do these things significantly better than most humans at any given moment. So what really distinguishes us are the soft skills. That is literally what we have that is unique, it's human, and it's likely to be. So my view is that this is going to be even more valuable. So as we get more and more amazing AI tools that do a lot of the technical aspect, skill set aspect of jobs, that already happening, and I've seen a few really great applications. Our ability to improve the soft skills and the connection is going to be even more important for businesses to have any type of differentiation, competitive advantage, motivation, reduced turnover, high engagement, all the things that make a difference ultimately to how successful a business is.
At SHRM, we've actually stopped calling them the soft skills only because we find that they're actually more critical as the technology advances, right? And so one of the things we call them is the power skills. They're the ones that will actually help generate greater power in the work that you apply and the data that you capture and all those things. So we feel free to steal that. I know you will probably.
I'm completely stealing that. As you said that, we literally just adopted this. It changes. It will change on our website. It will change everywhere. That's an amazing reframing, which I absolutely love.
Feel free to steal that. That's a Johnny C. Taylor Jr. original. And so please feel free to use that. So you talked a little bit about how you see leadership effectiveness changing overall as we have these skills. Talk to me a little bit more though about I guess when you think about the global trends in leaders, right? I think about some of the research that we do at SHRM. We just this past week released our 2024 Global Culture Workplace kind of report that looks at how people rate their global workplaces and their cultures across the G20, the B20 kind of economies, right? And we see specifically that some economies are much better at introducing vulnerability of leaders, better leaders, more empathetic leaders. Some are more effective at having leaders who generate meaning in the work. I'd love to get your thought as you think about just global leadership trends that you've seen across your career. You talked about your storied career. What do you see leaders and those cultures doing to evolve over the next AI-based kind of revolution?
That's a great question. I'll start with what I think the biggest challenge is.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge ultimately is human adaptability. It's not technology, it's not strategy, it's not operations. For sure, there's businesses and business models that are very robust and will carry on for years. And, even though they will be disrupted, it will take longer. But ultimately, what is relevant for, I think, increasingly every single business and very, very relevant in the age of AI is how do I actually get to a culture of curiosity, to a culture of change, to a culture of adaptability? How do I generate a culture where people are ready to try things, be vulnerable, be wrong, adapt, and carry on? And that challenge, which is also the challenge with power skills, I'm already using the
Yeah.
term, is I think that one of the biggest challenges of leadership. Now, one big caveat here, of course, business context and cultural context make a big difference here. And the reality is, and I've said this to a few people, if a business is running out of money in the next 2 months and someone needs to know in that knows what's going on and they need to direct everyone and, they may need to fire people and they need to just tell people what to do, that's a different style of leadership that is required at that moment. But with the exception of these extreme cases where, the back is against the wall and you need to take immediate action, I do think that the evolution that is more and more happening is generating cultures where people are happy to participate and therefore are very curious and therefore will go out of the way to explore and find different solutions and therefore will put the extra time and extra thinking power. I mean, one of the things that I think is really underplayed on what's happening with AI, the reason why AI has grown so fast is because there is a huge amount of researchers that absolutely love what they do.
Mhm.
They love what they do, right? I mean, ultimately, they love what they do. They work together. They create amazing results, and that is why I think we have, also this explosion in the technology right now. So, how do you get to a place where people love what they do, where they have the curiosity and the mind of a researcher? They become more and more adaptable, and they're ready to drop off previous beliefs and adopt new ones, and they're also ready to drop off previous behaviors and adopt new ones. So I think that for me is one of the biggest challenges. I don't know how well it's actually happening. There are some organizations that are doing better than others, but I think that is, so if I was back in my corporate world running, a massive organization with people, that for me would be the biggest challenge. Of course, we're doing it in smaller businesses and startups. You see the adoption rate, by the way, of AI in startups is through the roof. It's faster than the adoption of AWS, if anything, which is really interesting, right? Because AWS was not adopted initially by large organizations, and startups led the way. So I think we're going to have this adaptability led by startups again, but the organizations that really want to stay being at the top of their game will need to integrate this as part of the process. How do we make our people more adaptable? How do we help them change ideas, behaviors, and still with a values framework? But that curiosity and speed to change, I think it's literally where I will put my money on businesses that win.
Hmm. Excellent. So here's a question that I'm gonna kind of ask you, and this is potentially a tricky question, right? Let's pretend that you're advising a CHRO, right? And we know that just as an example, leadership development is a $93 billion a year industry. It is a huge industry. My question for you is, that means that there is this market out there that is enormous. What do you advise? What would you say to a CHRO who's trying to figure out, how do I generate AI driven tools that will make a difference in my leadership development? What is it that you would ask, give them as advice, criteria that they should consider, those kinds of things?
I think the first, and it's obvious, and I'm sure every CHRO has thought about this, but I think it's new now, is have a really hard thing about what we can actually measure and what you cannot. Because the reality is, up until very few years ago, you could not measure most of the things that you're doing there. Like, that's why there was a McKinsey report that came out that said 66% of the CHROs and people that are paying for leadership development training think it's not delivering, right? Which is it's a crazy number. It's like 2/3 of the 90 billion industry. The people that are paying this money think it's not working, right? And why was it not working? Because for many, many years in the past, it was not possible to measure things. Like, that's the fundamental thing. So the first thing that I think is really, really different is think about how can I actually start measuring at work, in real time, in real life, what is actually changing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I would say, a very new way of thinking for these type of things. We've done in HR amazing things to understand payroll, amazing things to understand, organization design and, ROI in all sorts of different areas. This is a new opportunity that's not there. The second part is, unless you model adaptability and curiosity, it's not going to happen in the organization. So unless you're ready to take some calculated risks within, with a lot of attention to data, and unless you're ready to put out some resource and money to actually implement that, this is a change management process. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
change management that is arguably harder to do than other things that are more tangible, right? Because currently there's lack of data. Like, if you tell me, hey, I'm going to apply this tool, it's going to take care of all our benefits. Yeah, we have a ton of information, 5 different solutions for that, and we know how it's going to work. So there's something about here saying, hey, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to put some money and resource to really drive this through. And as part of that, I think is also making sure that the rest of the business and the CEO and the leadership team are engaged. If you can get a leadership team to go through this process at an executive level, and we've had some arguably not global businesses yet, but some smaller businesses going through that process, taking it to the whole organization is a completely different thing. It's not an HR thing anymore. It is something that we do as a business. And that's where, for me, I think the role of HR can dramatically change through the data here. Imagine a world where HR is actively measuring culture and has data around culture and has data around how culture really generally changes business results, because we know it does. Of course it does. But we could never prove it before. And the opportunity is there to do that. So my advice would be exactly that. So start with, hey, what are the new opportunities of measuring and being clear about things that we never even thought about before? Number 2, make sure we dedicate, this is a change management. We'll need some dedicated resources and money. We'll need to be ready to experiment safely, but experiment. And HR, let's face it, experimentation is not, it's not the number one thing that we learn. I'm not generalizing for everyone. There are some organizations that do better than others, but it's not the number one thing usually. So creating a safe space to experiment, that's super important. And thirdly, how do you actually move this to an organizational thing, something that organization actually does, because the value is there. And I bet you today, if any CHRO will go to CEO and say, hey, I can guarantee you'll have a dashboard here that measures actual sentiment and engagement of people on pretty much a weekly basis or even daily basis, predicting engagement, predicting how, which by the way we have done for a customer, how your town hall landed, right?
Yeah.
Because guess what? You can pick this up. If you have one-on-one discussions and you see what people have discussed about and you see the sentiment around that, you can anonymously really get data on how information has landed, right? What an amazing tool to have. I bet if you could do it today and you had it ready as a full proposition, and the vast majority of CEOs would say, "Hey, let's just do this. This is a priority, right? This would be one of the top 3 priorities in most organizations." So that's where I
Yeah.
think is the opportunity.
Well, I love where you're going to, because it is really the marriage of various forms of artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
It's the notion of doing some of that organizational network analysis,
Yeah.
sentiment analysis, even maybe bringing in what you're describing in the way that people actually engage one another in their leadership one-on-ones and in coaching in general. So I love the big picture view that you're providing, where AI is really augmenting the human side of what it is that we call an organization. I really appreciate that. And that's going to do it for this week's episode. A big thank you to Alex for sharing his expertise and deep insights with us. I know our audience is extremely appreciative and loves hearing about these unique applications of AI plus HI to make the world of work better. Before we say goodbye, I encourage you to follow the AI+HI Project wherever you enjoy your podcasts. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to comment, leave a review, etc. We welcome all feedback. Finally, you can find all our episodes on our website at shrm.org/AIHI. Thanks for joining the conversation, and we'll catch you next time.
SHRM.